We all know that Valorant revolves around its rifles and its operator. They're the strongest guns in the game, and for the most of the game, that's what you're going to be using. But since Valorant has an economy system, there are going to be times where you're going to have to use a weapon that's just weaker. And with a large amount of guns beside the rifles and operators that Valorant has available, it can be hard to decide what to choose. I always tell people to get really good at least one eco weapon, that way whenever you do have those rounds where you can buy a rifle, you can at least have a better chance of winning. And in today's video, we're going to discuss, at least in my opinion, what I think the top 5 eco weapons in Valorant are. And for those of you who are new to the channel, my name is Kier, and I hit Immortal almost every single season, so I kind of know what I'm talking about for the most part. But of course, these are just my opinions. If you disagree, that's perfectly fine. And I would actually encourage you to leave a comment down below if you think that there's a better weapon or a better eco weapon that I might have missed. So without further ado, let's begin with the video. Starting off at number 5 is the Stinger. Now the Stinger used to be one of the most busted eco weapons back in the day, but it did get nerfed a few months ago. Now I think the Stinger is one of the most slept on eco weapons in the game just because of that nerf, how bad it actually changed it. It used to be really good, like I said before, but it did take a massive hit to damage and to its accuracy. But the gun in close range can actually get you a kill. Now the only bad things about the Stinger is that, like I said, it has to be very close range. While it is accurate, it's not as accurate as it used to be, so you do kind of have to be close to the enemy in order for you to hit your shots. Now the biggest problem with the Stinger, and the thing that I think holds it back, is the small amount of ammo you can carry in your clip. Now the Stinger can hold about 20 bullets, but the shots are pretty weak, which means that you're going to have to hit most of your shots in order to get a kill. That being said, if you are lucky enough to get a kill with it, the odds of you being able to get another kill are very low without switching to your pistol. So I think your inability to get a second kill almost every single time really does hurt it in the long run. That being said though, if you do use it in close quarters and are lucky enough to only get one opponent, that could nab you an easy kill and a free gun. Now moving on to number 4, we have the Sheriff. Now I know a lot of people might debate this, I know a lot of people might be angry about this. Trust me, I am a Sheriff fan. I am a person who supports the Deagle or the Sheriff in any tactical shooter. I love the Deagle in CSGO, for example. But the Deagle in Valorant is just not as good as the Deagle in CSGO. I think that there are major flaws with the gun, including that you can't one-tap headshot in this game. Now the Sheriff in Valorant does allow you to one-shot headshot if you're within a certain range, but the fact that you can out-aim somebody with a Deagle, right, with a Sheriff, and hit for 145 past a certain range is absolutely nuts to me. I think that one of the best things CSGO ever had with the Deagle is that you can one-tap headshot anybody from across the map. If you're good enough to hit the shot and beat a rifle, then I think you deserve it, right? I think that's the point of it. I think that's the one thing that holds it back. Also, you can body shot pretty well with it. You don't have to shoot it as low as the Deagle in CSGO. In Valorant, you can kind of spam your shots a little bit and still manage to hit body shots if that's what you're going for. But I do think that the lack of a one-shot headshot after a certain range really is what hurts the Sheriff in the long run. I feel like if that were to be changed, that would make the Sheriff a much better weapon. And to medium to close range, it could actually be a pretty devastating eco weapon to buy if that was the case. Now that being said, however, I think the Sheriff is a really good eco weapon at the end of the day. Even though you can one-shot headshot from across the map, you can do it from a pretty decent range. So if you know that you're going to enter a site or defend a site at a close angle, then it would be a pretty good gun to take. If you can manage to out-aim somebody with a rifle and get a headshot, then that could give you a free gun for yourself. Now, the reason I put the Sheriff so high on the list compared to other people is that I think the Sheriff, while it's very good for what it does, it's not the most versatile eco weapon in the game. You are limited to what you can do with it, and you do have to play a certain way in order to make it work. Unless you're amazing and you're super cracked and you hit every single headshot, you are going to be limited to what you can hold. If you're holding a super close angle, the odds are you're going to have to hit that first shot or you're going to die. And you can't really play too far with it either because, like I said, you won't get that one headshot mechanic that you really want, right? You have to be within a certain range. So I feel like this is also what holds the Deagle back a little bit, the Sheriff, I'm sorry. And I feel like if you weren't limited, or maybe if it had another option, maybe if it was a little bit more accurate when spraying, then maybe you could use it a lot more for close quarters. But like I said, it's a medium range weapon. You can use it in close, but you're going to have to hit that shot, and you can't really use it too far unless the person's already hurt. So I feel like that's why I put it so high on the list. Now moving on to number 3, we have the king of the submachine guns, and that is the Spectre. Now the Spectre is probably one of the most popular eco weapons in the game just because of how versatile it is. Now the Spectre has 30 bullets, which is a large amount of ammo, and it can do decent damage from pretty far. Now the Spectre used to be pretty busted back when it was super accurate and did a lot more damage, but they did nerf it a little bit, which kind of hurt it in the eco game or in the meta. But people still tend to use it just due to the fact that you can run and gun with it, and I think that's the biggest strength that the Spectre has. When you're playing against an enemy team that has rifles, it is always going to be in your best interest to keep moving to make sure that they can hit that initial shot. If they have rifles, they're most likely going to have to stop moving and take the shot, which means that you have to take advantage of that and try to make them miss. If you take a Spectre, you're not supposed to stand still. You're supposed to keep running and gunning, and unfortunately that's what that gun is for. You can run and gun, hit headshots, and just mow people down, especially in close range, and it is up to the person with the rifle to completely track you or to correctly track you and make sure they hit that headshot. If not, they're pretty much going to die. Now, another good thing about the Spectre is that even though it doesn't do a lot of damage, if you manage to hit somebody in the head a few times, you can dink them and that will cause their camera to just fly up. So you'll get that little animation where your head kicks up and it'll be harder for them to aim. There's been a few times where I died to a Spectre from even medium range because they just shoot me in the head a few times, my camera goes wild, and I just can't hit my shot. And that is a big part of the Spectre. You can still hit headshots even though you're running, which is super important. Now, the bad thing about the Spectre, and this came with the nerf a few months ago, is that it's very hard to deal with, to do something with it long range anymore. It does do decent damage at medium range, but when you get kind of far, it does start to fall off significantly. Sometimes they can take up to 3 or 4, maybe even 5 headshots to kill somebody with it, which is absolutely absurd. But of course, it's not supposed to be that strong, right? It's supposed to be a close range weapon. So that is the downside to the Spectre. While it is pretty accurate and while it does do decent damage and has a good fire rate with a good amount of ammo, if you are in really long range, it's going to be harder for you to do anything. And if you're against good players, they're going to make sure that the fights they take are long range, right? If they're not going to be peeking you close if they have rifle. They're going to be going for those long range encounters, for the long lines of sight, right? And that's what you're going to be going up against. So I think that that is what holds it back in the long run. And one more thing that holds it back is also the price. It is not the most cheap weapon in the game. There are definitely better weapons out there that can maybe make more impact if your aim is on point. The Spectre is just kind of a safe choice to take, right? If you don't know if your aim is on or if you feel like your aim isn't that good today, then the Spectre is always a safe choice to take. Now, moving on to number 2, we have everybody's favorite weapon, and that is the Judge. The Judge is an absolute game changer just because of how much it can change around when used correctly. It's a powerful automatic shotgun that can completely destroy teams if they don't see you coming. And one of the biggest strengths about this gun is that 1, you can run and gun. 2, you have so many bullets in your chamber that you can shoot. I think it's about 7 or 8. And 3 is that if you're lucky enough and you have the RNG of the gods and every pellet hits, you can actually one-shot somebody from a pretty decent distance. There are people who have got into Radiant just by using a Judge. That's how strong it is. Now, there are many good things about the Judge, but there are some downsides, and one of them being the price. The Judge is one of the most expensive eco weapons in the game, costing you about 1,800 credits, which could put a dent in your savings if you don't have enough money to buy it. Now, the reason that the Judge is so high up on the list is that it's actually viable for holding certain positions. Even if your team is completely buying rifles and you can't afford one, buying a Judge and holding somewhere close is perfectly viable, and it's a strat that could definitely work if you play correctly. If you're holding U-Haul on bind, for example, and you play with a Judge, it would be very hard for that enemy team to flush you out without using a lot of their util. And at the end of the day, even if you die, if you waste a bunch of their util, then I think that's a win for your team. Now, I think the Judge is super strong, and the fact that if you get close to the enemy team with a Judge, then you pretty much already won the engagement. You're at least going to take 2 or 3 with you. You can collab people, you can destroy people, you can hide behind corners and destroy 2 or 3 people before they even realize what's going on. So I do think it's one of the strongest eco weapons in the game. One of the other major downsides for the Judge, however, is distance. Of course, it is a shotgun, and even though it can shoot pretty far and do pretty good damage from far away, it is, at the end of the day, a shotgun. So it's going to be very hard for you to be able to snipe people, and you're going to be better off just taking your pistol instead for those gunfights. If you do save and you buy a Judge and the enemies don't come to your bomb site, or you don't run into anybody up close, then it's going to be very hard for you to retake a site. And if they know you have a Judge, if they heard it before, they're not going to play any close angles, and you're pretty much going to get poked down from long lines of sight. So it's going to be very hard for you to make use of that shotgun if they don't come to your bomb site. But even with its flaws, the Judge is still just an amazing gun. Now, for an honorable mention, before we get to number 1, we're going to be talking about the Shorty. Now, the Shorty is super cheap, and it can actually win you pretty close quarters gunfights, even against rifles, if you know how to use it properly and position yourself. The Shorty is a super good investment if you're saving. If you don't have enough to buy a Judge or a Spectre, you can buy a Shorty and play a super cheese angle and probably get away with 1 or maybe 2 kills if you time the shots correctly. I absolutely love the Shorty, and even when I buy a rifle, I will oftentimes buy a Shorty to go along with it, and it'll cost me a few extra credits, but trust me, it's worth it when you get into those close quarters combats. It's super good. And moving on to the best eco weapon in the game, it is the Scout. Now, the reason I put the Scout so high up on the list is just because of how versatile the weapon actually is. The fact that you can one-shot headshot any enemy from any distance is amazing, and if your aim is on point, you can change around so quick even though you're saving. Not only that, but the gun is also almost perfectly accurate when hip firing. You don't have to aim down the lines of sight to get a clear shot. you can walk around and kind of use it as a deagle, except that the deagle will one-shot headshot anybody you hit. Now the fact that you can aim down sights and still be able to one-tap people is I think what makes it the strongest eco weapon in the game, just due to the fact that you can get a perfectly easy kill on somebody who just hasn't reacted in time. So even if they have a rifle, even if they buy full armor and buy all their util, if you get that one shot, if you hold an angle and just get that one person to peek their head at you, you can kill them. And that either gets a gun for you or get a gun for your teammate, and you can just kind of snowball your way through your eco round like that. Okay, now say you're not hitting those one-shot headshots, right? The scout is still a big important factor in the round because it does 101 to the body, which means that 2 scout shots will kill anybody no matter how much armor you buy. If you and your team buy scouts, the fact that you can out pelt people and pretty much 2-shot somebody, even if you don't hit the head, is incredibly strong, and the gun shoots so fast that it's really hard to deal with sometimes. If you're caught in the open against a person using a scout and they hit you once on the body, the tag is so much that you won't be able to run to cover most of the time, and you'll get hit with that second shot for free. So if they hit you once, you're going to have to hit that headshot in order for you not to die. If not, they're just going to peek you and hit you in the body again, and you're pretty much done. Now this gun shoots super fast, and you do have 5 bullets to shoot, so it does make it pretty hard for people to kind of work around it, especially when you're pretty good with your aim. Now what makes it also really strong is the fact that it only costs about 1,100 credits, which means it's super cheap. It's only a few $100 more than the sheriff. Now if you ask me, if you are stuck between a sheriff or a scout, I will take the scout almost every single time. That's almost a no-brainer for me, just due to the fact of how versatile it is versus the sheriff, right? If you don't aim down sights, you can still hit shots, right? And you will always one-shot headshot. You can zoom in if you have to with the scope. You shoot really fast, so you can still body shot people if they're not quick enough to kill you. And you pretty much just help people, right? You do 101. Even if you die and you hit them in the body, they're still lit 101. They're still about 1 or 2 shots from dying. So that would really help your team in the long run to try to win that round. But anyways, guys, that is my list. I hope you all enjoyed it. Let me know if you want me to make more of these videos in the future. Let me know in the comments below. Also, I do stream almost every single night, so if you do want to go ahead and check that out, I'll leave the link for that down below. Anyways, I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next video.